Welcome to the ACC Panic Room alongside Lauren Brownlow. I'm Joe Ovies in Greensboro for the ACC Tournament. It's a big Thursday, Brownlow. Let's get it. Let's get it.
Wow, how happy is Greensboro? Greensboro just keeps taking W's right now, right?
Yes.
Forcing
yes.
they sapped Jim Boeheim of his will to continue college basketball coaching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, shout out Wake Forest because that was like the triad. You know, a region we don't talk about often on this Panic Room, obviously.
Big fans of Steve Forbes, obviously, but yeah, we don't spend a lot of time talking about Wake Forest.
But that's where I grew up, the triad. Mm-hmm. You know, they combined forces, and now Jim Boeheim's gone, which I honestly did not. I didn't think that was going to happen.
I don't know. So okay. Let's actually we could start with the news of the tournament before we get to today's games that feature NC State, Carolina, Duke, and Wake Forest, and the potential for a semifinal Friday that has all four teams playing each other, which would be the drunkest I'll probably see this building since I went to a Rob Zombie show with Korn. Anyway, all the history here at Greensboro Coliseum, right?
Well, yeah.
So I wore one of your old shirts yesterday.
Saw that.
A Greensboro versus Boeheim. The amount of people as I was walking to our media seat, the amount of people that were like, love this shirt. I had one drunk Wake Forest fan going like, F Boeheim. So this building clearly still has it out for Jim Boeheim after what he had said back in 2017 about how Greensboro has no value to the ACC tournament, and he was very dismissive, but he was very Boeheim about it. I mean, the guy remains consistent with his bit, and I guess that's my biggest takeaway from yesterday's bizarre post game that I sat in on, Lauren, in that you kind of got the sense that the way this year had gone, he's 1 year removed from coaching his kids. What more is there for Jim Boeheim to do at Syracuse? You can all kind of see it's run out of steam. He's miserable. He got in trouble a few weeks back talking about Wake Forest buying a team. Never mind the context of the fact that they've got the big booster who's on the record saying, yeah, I got like $1 million ready to go for NIL.
Well, Wake Forest has so many advantages elsewhere. I guess it's easy to understand why that may make somebody a little bitter, except actually, no, they don't.
So you know I'm a vibes guy. Okay, the vibes were ripe for Jim Boeheim to exit. So I sat in on I didn't participate in this panel, but I sat in because I wanted to see, because it was for student media. And one of the questions was like asking coaches in post-game situations like this, like, are you done? Like, are you going to go to the NBA? Or what about your career as a coach? And Jim Boeheim was using an example. Like, everybody knew that if he had lost yesterday, he was going to get asked questions about his future. So consider our surprise that it did not go the way we initially thought it would go. He wasn't initially chippy. He was actually like wistful and remembering and like actually thoughtful. And then he went to classic Boeheim when he said, like, yeah, you guys are just too dumb to figure out that I gave 2 retirement speeches on Saturday in the last home game. And that's when Donna DeToda of Syracuse.com,
my girl,
she was just like, oh, I'm sorry, did you say you retired? And that's when you had the exchange. And I guess the best thing I can say, Lauren, there's the poetic justice of this building that already has it out for Greensboro. Wake Forest, who was this, like, because they caught a stray in Jim Boeheim's comments, a buzzer beater. Steve Forbes is right over here from where I'm sitting, doing the DX chop. It was like a really cathartic moment for people here to stick it to Boeheim, and then to literally have his career end here makes it just chef's kiss for so many people.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think the writing on the wall when it comes to like the tournament being in Greensboro in the future is pretty clear. I think there's a lot of things that have changed in terms of the ACC tournament. I don't know why this shook me so much, but I know my mom was telling me that like they don't even have the fans sitting in their own sections anymore.
No.
I don't love that. That's just,
although
like, it's such a like
your parents had great seats, by the way.
Anyways, when you grow up like in this area, especially, it does become this like weird extension of you. And like you even see people from like, the triangle schools and stuff, and the, schools all over the state talking about this kind of being a part of their identity. And so like, yeah, when Boeheim takes a shot, like at a city like Greensboro, we all go like, who are you? Like, get out.
Right.
We didn't ask,
Right.
we collectively didn't ask you to come here. Like, cool that you're here at all. Although, like, after a couple years, they kind of stopped providing the value they did in the beginning. But like, I think that was part of it too, is like, these things are so integral to what the ACC has been for a lot of us, and has like this nostalgia and this historic value. And we keep seeing these things being wiped out. And it was this weird, albeit temporary, like a Pyrrhic victory or whatever, but it was this like quick little W that some of us purists, even those of us who have accepted the future and what that will probably look like, it's like a temporary victory for us.
Well, if it's gonna go out, it's gonna go out in style with these matchups. But I do think it's interesting. You've had 2 days here at the ACC tournament, Tuesday and Wednesday, and coaches have left. Mike Brey is officially done, and he went out in a very
official?
way.
I thought he was like hedging.
Oh, he's done at Notre Dame.
Oh, well,
he's not done coaching, but he's done at Notre Dame. I think people recognize that.
Yeah.
A lot of folks are keeping an eye on Georgetown to see what happens there, and maybe that's where Mike Brey goes. But Mike Brey kind of goes out with like I had fun here. Let's all have a party. Jim Boeheim goes out like Jim Boeheim, and he's committed to the bit. Mike Krzyzewski tries the transition plan, and maybe it's working. Those results aren't known yet. And Roy Williams retired in a very Roy Williams way. So in the last 2 years, we've seen 4 key guys in the ACC all kind of go out the way that you would expect them to. It's like very fitting of their personalities in the grand scheme of things. But to your point about diminishing returns here in Greensboro, and they've mixed up the seating, and I don't even think there's a Bojangles in the concourse anymore. So there's a lot that I know.
What did you say?
Right. I had to double check today to get confirmation, but I don't think there's a Bojangles in the building anymore. I know.
This is extremely upsetting. I feel like we need to reach out to Bojangles for comment. Was there a negotiation snag along the way? This is not what?
I'll see if I can find a leftover Supreme somewhere.
I'm shook.
Yeah, so I will confirm for you. I'm gonna walk around the building today because I gotta get my dad a Miami shirt. So we'll see. We'll see. All right, about the games, because I do have a radio show to do at 10 o'clock. We'll start. Let's start in order, shall we, Lauren? We've got Miami and Wake Forest off the fun vibe. Miami, this is a classic case where Jim Larrañaga has another good team in the ACC, wins the regular season. You can assign whatever value you want to it. They got the ACC Player of the Year in Isaiah Wong, while Wake Forest is kind of scrapping by right now. They're missing Monsanto. That clearly factors into how they want to go about stuff. Defensively, Wake Forest has been on the struggle bus. They really can't stop anybody. But if the threes go in like they were yesterday, well, then who knows what's going to happen against the Hurricanes this afternoon.
That's why when I did my ACC tournament preview for WRALSportsFan.com, I think the GIF I picked for them was calling somebody a dreamer, because Wake, when they're making shots, they're very difficult to beat. And I think if you were in the Coliseum yesterday, obviously I wasn't, but I can assume that if you were in there, you heard that the Coliseum got behind Wake, and their fans live around there and will show. I have seen it with my own 2 eyeballs. I know it's been a while for some of y'all, but I promise you they're there. And if they keep winning, they're going to come out. And I mean, Greensboro would just be salivating if that's the case, great, Wake's making a run, that's even better, add to the Big Four success. But yeah, I mean, when they're making shots, they can beat anybody, but they just are so untrustworthy defensively, and then they get a little turnover-y at times. They start getting a little YOLO-y on offense and taking bad shots. The shots are great when they're going in, but when they don't go in, you're maybe don't take that 2 seconds into the shot clock with an 11-point lead, with 12 minutes to go. It's not the best plan.
Then we got Duke and Pitt. This one, I'm going to be really interested to see how Pitt comes out in this game. They miss an opportunity down the stretch through tiebreakers to be number 1, losing to Miami. And I go back to the game at Cameron Indoor Stadium where Duke hadn't become Duke that we know now, a team that people are intrigued by. But Pitt, the reason why I thought Pitt could come out of that game at Cameron Indoor with a win is because that is a tough, you hear the phrase, it's a rock fight, right? Pitt's going to beat you in a rock fight. Funny thing has happened along the way for Duke. They've gotten accustomed to winning these rock fights with their talented roster. So I have a feeling it's going to be another tight game between these two teams. And I mean, I could see it both ways, Lauren. I feel like Duke is a squad that understands what they're doing, and I can see them playing for the championship on Saturday. But it also wouldn't surprise me if Pitt gets the better of them, kind of in a run it back mode, in that we should have had you at Cameron. We're going to get you here in Greensboro.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think we should ever underestimate, whether it's Miami or Pitt or whomever, the energy of a team that is from out of state, that is not one of the traditional powers, that, you know, wants to sort of start to get a run going. They can kind of rally around that and rally around the fact that the crowd's not for them. I mean, Pitt had success on the road. They're an experienced team. You saw what happened to them at North Carolina. They had every chance to go away at North Carolina, but they wouldn't. And, you know, and they never really went away at Duke either. Like you said, it's just Duke had a little more at the end, but and you know what, yesterday, I feel like yesterday's game is one that Pitt of the last like 5 years loses every single time.
I'm with you on that.
Like Georgia Tech was playing out of their minds because sure, why not? Why wouldn't you randomly start doing that at the end of a season, Josh Pastner? What's happening? Like, what is
this? It's so Josh Pastner. It's Josh Pastner.
But apparently
That's
really
why when I'm putting together a Mount Rushmore, because I know this came up on ESPN yesterday, and some people wanted to put Jim Boeheim on the Mount Rushmore coaches.
Okay.
Now, if you're gonna
Tom Crean ended up clarifying that, by the way, though. He said like of the last like 30 years.
Oh, fine. In the last 30 years, I don't even know if Jim Boeheim's on there. I mean, in the last 30 years, it's Dean Smith, Mike Krzyzewski. After that, you're probably
Dean
going
might be almost more than 30 at this point. So just
I guess
yourself.
It might be more than 30. So what?
Almost.
Roy
we're
Williams
there.
then. Fine. We'll move on from Dean Smith. We'll put Roy Williams in there, and I'll put face shield pandemic Josh Pastner on my Mount Rushmore coaches, because you never know what you're going to get with that guy. He's a pure chaos agent, and I absolutely love it. All right, to Virginia and North Carolina. I told Ken Smith this on WRAL this morning. North Carolina beating Boston College is like when your kids do their chores and they want credit for it. Like, nah, bro, that's what you should do. Like, sorry. Like, congratulations, you did the dishes. I'm not giving you any credit for that.
I mean, I guess like to fully stretch the analogy, though, it's like when they not only do the dishes, but like run the dishwasher, dry them, put them away. And you're like, whoa, didn't expect that much. Okay. You know,
well, I mean, maybe that's in the way that they shot yesterday. Maybe that was the case. But there was a little bit of scares, you know, like Armando Bacot twisted his ankle. I was kind of surprised he played the first 5 minutes of the second half. Maybe it was to kind of give it a go. But I mean, they eventually put him on the bench because they didn't need him. And, you know, like, look, my thing with Carolina is, if your argument to me is that Hubert Davis is still trying to find a spark, buddy, like, it's too late in the game to try to kind of find yourself. If you're North Carolina, you're going up against teams who do know themselves. And this isn't the magic of last year. I think for the most part, most Carolina fans understand that. I think it's just like that. It's just, you know, like the spark of hope. I'm like, ooh, maybe I'm buying it now. I guess we'll see against Virginia tonight, because the shots fell in the first half of that game in the Smith Center. It was a crucial win for them to get themselves in the discussion for the NCAA tournament. My issue with Carolina is, how repeatable are your performances?
The thing that's so frustrating about them for me, too, is that, like, and, you know, Steve Wojciechowski pointed this out at halftime, and he's right. One of the reasons the threes go down for them when they're playing well like that, it's not just because they're getting lucky, it's also because they're getting good threes. That's what ball movement does, people.
It's funny you mentioned that, because that's what Hubert Davis immediately went to. He's like, you can look at all the stats. The one I'm looking at, 16 assists because they moved the ball.
You know what? A three-pointer that Caleb Love takes contested at the end of a shot clock, step back with a hand in his face, is not the same as a wide open corner three. It's just not, no matter who is taking it. And I do think it's not the sole contributing factor, but I do think it's a big one into North Carolina's lack of success shooting, because a lot of these guys are the same people that did shoot well at the end of last year. We've seen it, but when you're not getting good looks, you know, that does impact it. And I think that, you know, if they can, maybe at one point they'll finally be like, hey, ball movement works, but it just hasn't really happened. Virginia is such a tough defensive team to play against. You wonder if they're going to have the patience. But look, I know better than to try to predict anything when it comes to North Carolina at this point.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I will. The 2 times I've had a strong feeling about what they would do, they did it. It was Clemson and Virginia.
Okay.
That's it. I have not had a strong feeling since. I have no idea. They could do almost literally anything in this basketball game, save like walk off the court, and I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
It's funny you mentioned, and we'll close on this. It's funny you mentioned even you have strong feelings about stuff. I had a very strong feeling about NC State after the loss at Cameron Indoor Stadium to Duke, in that Terquavion Smith needed a week off. Like sometimes you just gotta step away for a hot minute and come back at it, and that's exactly what happened. And a quirk in the schedule, they had an off weekend before the ACC tournament. And I believe Kevin Keats when he says he doesn't worry about Terquavion, and it's right. I mean, the proof is out there in the results. This is a team that hasn't gone too high, hasn't gone too low. The eye opener was the fact that was the first time all season they lost back-to-back games. So I was not surprised at the way that NC State came out against Virginia Tech last night. To me, NC State can win this thing.
Absolutely.
If Terquavion Smith and Jarkel Joyner are going to play the way that they did. But the only other way they're going to win this thing, the offense is going to come to you. DJ Burns is going to get his. The only way NC State's going to win this thing is if they continue to play defense at a high level. They play defense at a high level against Duke after having a week or two where they weren't all so high. I mean, that was where Clemson came into play.
Right.
And then how they played against Virginia Tech last night.
No,
they
it was really
absolutely
impressive.
They took Hunter Couture out of the game. They made him work hard to get shots. If they can continue that against Clemson, which they didn't do the last time, we'll see him on Friday night.
I just think that stuck out to me so much as one of the biggest differences from this year's NC State team for past years is that their half-court defense, it's not always exceptional, but it's good. It's way better than it ever was.
It's funny. NC State and Carolina are in a position where it's like if you just were average at these things, you could be so much better. For State, it's if you just play defense a little bit better, which they did, it's amazing how far you'll go. And in the case of North Carolina, you talked about ball movement. If you just make 2 more threes a game, how are we talking about your season?
Right.
2 better shots a game. We might be talking about the Tar Heels a little bit differently. And hopefully we'll get a Big 4 Friday.
How many do you think we get? Not even like calling.
I think we're gonna get 3 out of the 4.
3.
Yeah,
I was gonna go
3
with
out
2.
of the 4. No, we're gonna get 3 out of the 4. I don't think Wake beats Miami today. I think the Triangle squads move on. Let's go, Lauren.
Okay.
Let's go.
I say 2, so we'll see.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's go wrap it up for this edition of the ACC Panic Room. You gonna stay up tonight?
What choice do I have?
I don't know. Maybe we'll.
At least I don't have to write after it like I usually do.
Maybe we'll panic tonight. Maybe we'll panic room after dark. We'll see what happens. We'll see you then.